The vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before the sleek, silver spacecraft known as Orion's Echo. Its surface shimmered faintly under the light of two suns, their golden and blue hues casting a surreal glow across its metallic hull. Inside, Zenera floated gracefully in zero gravity, her translucent body glowing softly like a living aurora. She was one of the Veilith, an aquatic species that had evolved to live in harmony with the oceans of their home planet, Caliph Prime. Her skin pulsed gently with shifting colors, a natural form of communication among her kind. Zenera wasn't just any member of her species. She was chosen for this mission because of her sharp intellect and insatiable curiosity. For years, the Veilith had scanned the galaxy for signs of intelligent life beyond their own. They had found barren moons, toxic atmospheres, and primitive organisms, but nothing remotely close to what they considered advanced. That is, until now. A faint signal had been detected emanating from a distant world, a small rocky planet orbiting a single yellow star. The data suggested it teemed with life, including beings capable of creating complex technology. As the ship approached the mysterious planet, Zenera drifted toward the observation deck, her movements fluid and deliberate. Pressing her hands against the transparent barrier, she gazed out at the swirling blues and greens below. The sight took her breath away, if she could breathe air, that is. The planet looked alive, vibrant, and unlike anything she'd ever seen. Most worlds were dull and lifeless compared to Caliph Prime's oceanic beauty, but this place seemed different. It felt full of possibilities. Her captain, a stoic elder named Valor, joined her at the window. His voice resonated directly into her mind through telepathy, a common method of communication among the Veilith. "This is it, Zenera," he said, his thoughts calm yet tinged with excitement. "After centuries of searching, we may finally have found another civilization worthy of our attention." Zenera nodded, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to reflect her anticipation. "Do you think they'll be like us?" she asked, her mental tone laced with wonder. "Will they value knowledge and cooperation over conflict?" Valor chuckled softly, though his expression remained serious. "We can only hope. But remember, Zenera, not all intelligence follows the same path. Be cautious when you go down there. We still don't know if these creatures are hostile or friendly." Zenera understood the weight of his words. This mission wasn't just about exploration. It was about survival. If the inhabitants of this planet posed a threat, the Veilith would need to act swiftly to protect themselves. But deep down, Zenera hoped for something more. She wanted to believe that wherever intelligence arose, it carried the potential for kindness and understanding. Hours later, preparations were complete. Zenera stood in the teleportation chamber alongside two other members of her team. Renis, a skilled engineer, and Tavor, a biologist specializing in alien ecosystems. Each wore a sleek suit designed to shield them from Earth's unfamiliar atmosphere while allowing them to blend seamlessly into their surroundings using cloaking technology. Remember, Valor instructed as the countdown began, your primary objective is observation. Gather data, document everything, and avoid direct contact unless absolutely necessary. Our goal is to learn, not interfere. The trio exchanged determined glances before the room filled with a soft hum. In an instant, they vanished, reappearing moments later on the surface of the strange new world. The first thing Zenera noticed was the air. It smelled rich and earthy, unlike the sterile environment of the spaceship. Her sensitive receptors picked up traces of moisture, vegetation, and something else she couldn't quite identify. It was intoxicating. They had materialized in a dense forest clearing, surrounded by towering trees whose leaves rustled softly in the breeze. Rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy above, creating dappled patterns on the ground. The scene was peaceful, almost serene. Renis immediately activated his scanner, which emitted a low whirring sound as it analyzed the surrounding environment. Tavor knelt to examine a patch of moss growing near their feet, marveling at its intricate structure. But Zenera's focus was elsewhere. Something about this place felt alive in a way she hadn't anticipated. She moved cautiously, her steps silent despite the uneven terrain. As she ventured deeper into the clearing, her keen senses picked up movement nearby. A shadow flitted between the trees, accompanied by the faint crunch of leaves beneath unseen feet. Curiosity getting the better of her, Zinera followed the sound. She rounded a cluster of bushes and froze. There, standing no more than 10 paces away, was a creature unlike anything she'd ever encountered. It was tall and bipedal, with smooth, pale skin that seemed almost fragile in the sunlight. Its eyes widened in shock as it turned to face her, holding some kind of handheld device emitting a bright beam of light. For a moment, neither of them moved. Zinera's heart, or whatever passed for one in her species, pounded with a mixture of fear and awe. This being didn't look like a machine or an energy construct. It was organic, vulnerable, and utterly alien. And yet there was an undeniable intelligence in its gaze, a spark that told her this creature was far more than it appeared. You're not machines," Zinera whispered telepathically, her voice trembling slightly as it echoed in the human's mind. The creature, clearly startled, dropped the light-emitting device and raised its hands defensively. Zinera realized too late that her translucent form must have been alarming to someone unaccustomed to seeing extraterrestrial life. But even as adrenaline coursed through her veins, she couldn't help but marvel at the sheer improbability of it all. Here she was, millions of light years from home, staring at a being made entirely of flesh and bone. How could such a delicate structure house intelligence? How could it survive without the protections afforded by scales, shells, or exoskeletons? Questions flooded her mind, each one more intriguing than the last. And so, in that quiet forest clearing, two vastly different beings stood frozen in mutual astonishment, unaware that their encounter would set the stage for something far greater than either could have imagined. The forest clearing was silent except for the soft rustling of leaves overhead and the distant chirping of unseen birds. Zinera stood frozen, her translucent body shimmering faintly as sunlight filtered through the trees. The human, whose name she did not yet know, was equally still, her wide eyes locked onto Zinera's alien form. The handheld device that had emitted the blinding light lay forgotten on the ground between them. Zinera's mind raced. She had expected to find advanced machines or energy-based entities, perhaps even beings encased in metallic exoskeletons. But this fragile, fleshy creature before her defied every assumption she'd ever held about intelligent life. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed rapidly, betraying her confusion and awe. How could such a delicate structure house consciousness? And how could it possibly survive in an environment so unpredictable? The human slowly lowered her hands, her expression shifting from shock to cautious curiosity. She tilted her head slightly, studying Zinera with an intensity that made the alien feel both exposed and understood. Then, to Zinera's surprise, the human took a hesitant step forward. What are you?" the human asked aloud, her voice soft but steady. Though Zinera couldn't understand the spoken words directly, the intent behind them resonated clearly in her telepathic senses. "I am Zinera," she replied, projecting her thoughts gently into the human's mind. "I come from a world far beyond your stars. We mean no harm." The human flinched slightly at the intrusion of Zinera's voice into her thoughts, but she didn't retreat. Instead, her brow furrowed in concentration as if trying to process what was happening. After a moment, she nodded slowly, as though deciding that communication, however strange, was better than fear. "My name is Elena," she said, pointing to herself. When Zinera didn't react immediately, Elena repeated the gesture more deliberately, tapping her chest twice. "Elena." Zinera mimicked the motion, touching her own chest lightly. "Elena," she echoed mentally, her luminescent patterns shifting in appreciation. "You speak without thought touch. Interesting." Elena frowned slightly, clearly puzzled by the phrase thought touch. But instead of dwelling on it, she pointed toward the sky, then back at Zinera. Are you from space? Yes, Zenera confirmed, her telepathic tone worn with admiration. From very far away. Your world is new to us. Alina's lips parted in astonishment, her earlier apprehension giving way to fascination. She glanced around the forest as if seeing it through new eyes, then looked back at Zenera. Why are you here? She asked, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. What do you want? To learn, Zenera replied simply. We seek to understand others like you. Intelligent beings who create, think, and dream. Alina blinked, absorbing the words. For a moment, she seemed lost in thought, her gaze drifting to the fallen flashlight on the ground. Then, with sudden determination, she bent down to retrieve it. Holding it up, she pressed a button, causing the beam of light to shine brightly once more. She pointed it at various objects, a tree trunk, a patch of moss, and finally herself, before turning it toward Zenera. Light, she said firmly, emphasizing the word. This is light. Zenera observed the demonstration carefully, her multifaceted eyes adapting effortlessly to the brightness. Light, she repeated, mimicking the sound imperfectly, but close enough to make Alina smile. Encouraged, Alina continued, pointing to other things in the clearing. Trees, rocks, the sky, and naming them one by one. Each time, Zenera repeated the word, her glowing patterns shifting in response. Despite their vast differences, a connection began to form between them. Alina's patience and willingness to communicate struck Zenera deeply. On Caliph Prime, interactions were often seamless thanks to telepathy, but here, language was a tangible bridge, one built word by word, gesture by gesture. As their impromptu lesson progressed, Alina grew bolder, stepping closer to examine Zenera's translucent form. She reached out tentatively, her hand hovering just inches away from Zenera's arm. Sensing no malice, Zenera extended her own limb, allowing the human to touch her. Alina's fingers brushed against Zenera's cool, gelatinous skin, eliciting a sharp intake of breath. You're not solid, Alina murmured, her voice filled with wonder. Like water, but different. Zenera chuckled softly, the sound translating into a series of gentle vibrations in Alina's mind. Not solid, no. My people live within oceans. We are shaped by currents and tides. Alina's eyes widened further. Oceans. You live underwater. Yes, Zenera confirmed. Our cities float beneath waves. Light dances through crystal domes. It is beautiful. Alina stared at her, visibly struggling to imagine such a place. That sounds incredible, she said finally, her tone tinged with longing. I study nature. I've always loved exploring forests and oceans. But yours must be so different. It is, Zenera agreed. But yours has beauty too. These trees, this air, it feels alive. For a while, they simply stood there, sharing quiet observations about their respective worlds. Alina described Earth's diversity, its mountains, deserts, and bustling cities. Zenera spoke of Caliph Prime's eternal oceans, where bioluminescent creatures lit up the depths like stars. Despite their inability to fully convey the intricacies of their environments, both women found joy in the exchange. However, the peaceful moment was interrupted when a loud crack echoed through the forest. Alina spun around, scanning the trees nervously. Did you hear that? She whispered, her earlier confidence wavering. Zenera activated her suit's sensors, detecting movement nearby. A small group of animals, likely deer, had been startled by something. But before she could reassure Alina, another sound followed, the unmistakable hum of machinery. Alina's face paled. Drone, she muttered, grabbing Zenera's arm urgently. They're looking for me. If they see you. Zenera's glowing patterns shifted to a deep blue, signaling alarm. She hadn't anticipated being discovered so soon. Her mission was supposed to remain covered until they gathered sufficient data. Now, thanks to her curiosity, everything was at risk. We must leave. Zinera said firmly, already activating her cloaking device. As her form shimmered and faded from view, she turned back to Alina. "Thank you, Alina. You have shown me much." Alina hesitated, her grip tightening on Zinera's now invisible arm. "Wait, will I ever see you again?" Zinera paused, her heart, or its equivalent, aching at the plea in Alina's voice. "Yes," she promised, her telepathic tone unwavering. "We will meet again. Until then, trust that we mean no harm." With that, Zinera stepped back, disappearing entirely into the shadows of the forest. Moments later, a sleek black drone hovered into the clearing, its cameras scanning the area. Alina stood alone, clutching the flashlight tightly, her mind reeling from the encounter. Though Zinera was gone, the memory of her glowing presence lingered vividly in Alina's mind. Somewhere out there, among the stars, an entire civilization awaited discovery. And for the first time, Alina felt certain that humanity wasn't alone. The forest grew quieter as Zinera retreated deeper into the shadows, her cloaking device rendering her invisible to both human eyes and technological sensors. Though she had promised Alina they would meet again, a pang of guilt lingered in her chest, or whatever passed for one in her gelatinous anatomy. She hadn't meant to put the human in danger, nor had she expected their interaction to leave such a profound impact on her own thoughts. Back aboard Orion's Echo, Zinera sat in the observation lounge, staring at holographic projections of Earth's surface. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted erratically, reflecting the whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. The mission debrief with Captain Vaylor loomed ahead, but for no thaw, she allowed herself a rare moment of introspection. Everything about Alina, the warmth in her gaze, the curiosity in her questions, the way she had touched Zinera's skin without fear, had challenged everything Zinera thought she knew about intelligent life. "Zinera," came Rinna's voice from behind her, snapping her out of her reverie. He floated into the room, his sleek suit still damp from their earlier excursion. "You've been quiet since we returned. Is something wrong?" She turned to face him, her glowing patterns softening slightly. "It's complicated," she admitted. "Alina showed me things I wasn't prepared for. Their species, they're so different from us, yet there's something remarkable about them." Rinnis tilted his head, his multifaceted eyes narrowing slightly. "Different how?" "Fragile, yes, but is that all?" "No," Zinera replied firmly. "They're adaptable, creative, resilient. Did you see how quickly Alina tried to communicate? Even when faced with something completely alien, she didn't panic. She reached out." Rinnis crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "Reaching out doesn't mean much if they lack structure or discipline. We don't know enough about them yet to judge. But that's exactly my point," Zinera exclaimed, her patterns flaring brighter. "We shouldn't judge them based on assumptions. Just because they're not like us doesn't mean they're inferior. In fact, I think they might teach us something." Rinnis sighed, clearly unconvinced. "Be careful, Zinera. Emotion can cloud judgment. Remember why we're here, to gather data, not form attachments." Before Zinera could respond, Tavor entered the room, his movements slow and deliberate. Unlike Rinnis, who was all logic and precision, Tavor approached life with a sense of wonder akin to Zinera's own. His suit carried traces of Earth's soil, evidence of his meticulous study of its ecosystems. "I've been analyzing the samples we collected," Tavor said, his telepathic tone tinged with excitement. "This planet, it's extraordinary. The biodiversity is staggering, and the way these organisms interact with each other, it's almost poetic." Zinera leaned forward eagerly. "Tell me more." Tavor activated a hologram, displaying images of microscopic organisms, plants, and animals. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a cluster of cells. "Their biology is incredibly complex, yet efficient. They've evolved mechanisms to survive extreme conditions, heal themselves, and even reproduce without external intervention. And their technology, crude compared to ours, but innovative nonetheless. It's clear they value progress, even if it comes at a cost. Zinara nodded thoughtfully. That's what Alina tried to explain. Humans are driven by ambition, creativity, and emotion. They create art, music, stories, all things that connect them to one another, and destroy their environment in the process. Rhaenys interjected dryly. Don't forget the signs of pollution and resource depletion we detected during our scans. Yes, they have flaws, Zinara acknowledged. But isn't that what makes them fascinating? They're imperfect, yet striving to improve. Doesn't that remind you of us, centuries ago? The room fell silent as her words sank in. For all their differences, humanity bore striking similarities to the early days of the Vaelith, a species struggling to balance survival with growth. It was a humbling realization, one that filled Zinara with a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Alina couldn't stop thinking about Zinara. After the drone had scanned the area and departed, she returned to her campsite, her mind racing with questions. Who were these beings? Why had they come to Earth? And most importantly, how could she prove to the world that they existed? Over the next few days, Alina pored over the faint traces of alien tech left behind during Zinara's visit. Using her scientific expertise, she managed to isolate a residual energy signature embedded in the soil where Zinara had stood. It was unlike anything she'd ever encountered, neither electromagnetic nor chemical, but undeniably extraterrestrial. Her discovery reignited a childhood dream, to bridge the gap between humanity and the cosmos. With determination burning in her chest, Alina began working on a rudimentary communication device. She theorized that if Zinara could project thoughts into her mind, perhaps humans could replicate the process using sound waves and electromagnetic pulses. Late one night, as rain pattered against her tent, Alina tested her prototype. The machine emitted a low-frequency hum, accompanied by flashes of light designed to mimic Zinara's bioluminescent patterns. Though crude, it gave her hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could send a message loud enough for the stars to hear. Back aboard Orion's Echo, Zinara found herself drawn to the observation deck once more. From orbit, Earth looked breathtakingly beautiful, a swirling mosaic of blues, greens, and whites. Her fingers hovered over the control panel, accessing footage captured by Earth's satellites. Cities glowed like constellations, highways stretched like veins, and vast oceans shimmered under the sun. Despite its flaws, the planet radiated life. Then she noticed something unusual, a faint signal emanating from the same region where she had met Alina. It was weak, inconsistent, but unmistakably artificial. Could it be a coincidence, or was someone trying to reach out? Her heart skipped a beat as she realized the truth. Alina hadn't given up. Against all odds, the human was attempting to communicate. "Captain," Zinara called out urgently, her voice echoing through the ship's corridors. When Vaelor arrived, she played the signal for him. "This changes everything," she said earnestly. "They're reaching out to us." Vaelor studied the data carefully, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "If they're willing to make contact, we must respond cautiously. But remember, Zinara, diplomacy is delicate. One misstep could lead to disaster." "I understand," Zinara replied, her patterns glowing with resolve. "But I also believe this is an opportunity we can't ignore. If we approach them with openness and respect, we might forge a bond stronger than either of our species could achieve alone." Vaelor hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Very well. Prepare a response. But let us proceed carefully." As Zinara worked on crafting a reply, she felt a surge of hope. Humanity's resilience, creativity, and desire to connect mirrored the best qualities of her own people. Perhaps together, they could build a future brighter than either had imagined. And somewhere on Earth, beneath the starry sky, Alina watched the horizon, her makeshift device humming softly. Someday soon, she knew, her message would find its way home. The signal from Earth grew stronger with each passing day, a faint but persistent beacon cutting through the void of space. Zinara monitored it closely from Orion's Echo, her bioluminescent patterns shifting in anticipation. The message wasn't complex, just a series of rhythmic pulses accompanied by flashes of light. But its intent was clear. Alina was trying to communicate, and she was doing so with remarkable ingenuity. Zenera couldn't help but marvel at the humans' determination. Despite their technological limitations, they had managed to create something that could bridge the gap between their worlds. It was proof of what she had suspected all along. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in their tools or structures, but in their resilience and creativity. "Are you certain this is wise?" Rhaenys asked cautiously as Zenera prepared to send a response. He hovered nearby, his suit's sensors scanning the ship's systems for any anomalies. "We still don't know enough about them. What if this is a trap?" "It's not a trap," Zenera replied confidently, her telepathic tone steady. Alina wouldn't risk exposing herself unless she genuinely wanted peace. "Trust me, I saw it in her eyes." Rhaenys sighed, clearly uneasy. "Your optimism is admirable, but we can't afford to be reckless. One wrong move could jeopardize everything." "I agree," Captain Vaylor interjected, gliding into the room with an air of authority. His glowing patterns pulsed slowly, signaling calm deliberation. "But Zenera is right about one thing. Ignoring this opportunity would be equally reckless. If we respond carefully, we might gain valuable insights into their intentions." With Vaylor's approval, Zenera activated the ship's communication array. Using a combination of electromagnetic pulses and holographic projections, she crafted a reply designed to mimic the rhythm and structure of Alina's original signal. She added variations to convey curiosity and goodwill, hoping the humans would interpret it correctly. As the message traveled toward Earth, Zenera returned to the observation deck, her gaze fixed on the planet below. Its swirling clouds and vibrant continents seemed almost alive, pulsing with energy and potential. For the first time, she felt a deep connection to this distant world, a sense of belonging that transcended physical boundaries. On Earth, Alina sat hunched over her makeshift device, her eyes glued to the screen displaying real-time data. Days had passed since she sent her initial signal, and though she hadn't expected an immediate response, doubt began creeping into her mind. Had she misjudged Zenera? Was her effort futile? Then, just as despair threatened to take hold, the machine detected something extraordinary. A faint pulse echoed through the air, followed by a sequence of rhythmic flashes. Alina's heart raced as she analyzed the pattern. It matched her own signal, but with subtle differences, as if someone, or something, was responding. Tears welled up in her eyes as realization dawned. "They heard me," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "They're answering." She quickly recorded the incoming transmission, analyzing every detail. Though rudimentary, the message carried unmistakable signs of intelligence. Patterns repeated in deliberate sequences, suggesting a form of language. More importantly, the tone felt friendly. Alina knew she needed help to decode the message fully. Reaching out to trusted colleagues, she shared fragments of the data under the guise of studying atmospheric phenomena. Together, they worked tirelessly, piecing together the alien communication like a cosmic puzzle. Meanwhile, Alina continued refining her device, incorporating feedback from the new signal. Each iteration brought her closer to establishing two-way communication. Her excitement grew with every breakthrough, fueling her determination to prove that humanity wasn't alone. Back aboard Orion's Echo, Zenera gathered her team to discuss the next steps. "Their response confirms what I suspected," she said. Aboard Orion's Echo, tensions simmered among the Vaylith crew. While Zenera championed peaceful interaction with humanity, others were less convinced. Captain Vaylor remained cautious, his glowing patterns often shifting to a muted blue that signaled reservation. Rhaenys, ever the pragmatist, voiced concerns during strategy meetings, his skepticism growing louder with every transmission from Earth. "They're advancing too quickly," Rhaenys argued one evening as the team gathered in the ship's central chamber. Holographic projections of Earth's surface floated above them, dotted with markers indicating areas of heightened human activity. Their technology may be primitive compared to ours, but their rate of progress is alarming. What happens when they reverse engineer our signals? Or worse, when they try to replicate our cloaking tech? They won't, Zenera countered, her bioluminescent skin flaring slightly in defense. Alina isn't like that. She wants understanding, not conquest. And what about the rest of them? Rennis shot back, his tone sharp. Have you forgotten how many civilizations have destroyed themselves chasing power? Humanity might be curious now, but curiosity can turn into greed. Tavor, who had been quietly observing the debate, finally spoke up. Both sides have valid points, but we can't let fear dictate our actions. If we sever contact now, we risk undoing all the trust we've built. And trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. Vaylor nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. Fear is indeed a dangerous motivator, but so is naivety. Zenara, I admire your optimism, but we must prepare for the worst-case scenario. Diplomacy requires caution as much as it does hope. Zenara clenched her translucent fists, frustration welling within her. She understood their concerns, she truly did, but she couldn't shake the feeling that cutting ties would only perpetuate the cycle of mistrust that plagued so many species across the galaxy. Still, she knew arguing further would accomplish little. Instead, she focused on strengthening the connection with Alina, hoping their shared understanding could sway even the most skeptical minds. Meanwhile, on Earth, Alina faced challenges of her own. News of her work had begun to spread, albeit unintentionally. A colleague at the university where she conducted research stumbled upon fragments of her data while assisting with unrelated projects. At first, Alina dismissed the incident as harmless curiosity, but soon rumors started circulating among academic circles. Whispers of extraterrestrial contact reached ears far beyond her trusted inner circle. It wasn't long before government agencies took notice. Late one night, as Alina reviewed holographic projections of Caliph Prime, there was a knock at her door. Opening it revealed two men in dark suits, their expressions unreadable. Dr. Torres, one of them asked, flashing an ID badge. We're with the Department of Advanced Research. We'd like to discuss your recent findings. Alina's stomach dropped. Though she had anticipated scrutiny eventually, the sudden intrusion left her unprepared. She invited them inside, her mind racing as she scrambled to decide how much to reveal. The agents wasted no time getting to the point. We've detected unusual energy signatures emanating from your equipment, the taller agent said, gesturing toward her makeshift device. Care to explain? Alina hesitated, weighing her options. Denying everything would raise suspicions, but revealing too much could jeopardize the fragile relationship she had forged with Zenera. In the end, she settled for partial honesty. I'm conducting experiments on interstellar communication, she explained carefully. I believe there may be intelligent life out there attempting to reach us. These signals are part of my research. The agents exchanged glances, their skepticism evident. And you're doing this alone. The shorter one pressed. No collaborators. No oversight. It's a personal project, Alina admitted, avoiding eye contact. I wanted to explore possibilities outside conventional science. The taller agent leaned forward, his voice low but firm. Dr. Torres, if what you're saying is true, and I stress the word if, you need to understand the stakes here. Contact with extraterrestrial life isn't just a scientific breakthrough. It's a matter of global security. You're playing with forces you don't fully comprehend. Alina bristled at the condescension, but forced herself to remain calm. I understand the risks, she replied evenly. But isolation isn't the answer. Humanity deserves to know we're not alone, and that peace is possible. The agents didn't respond immediately, their silence heavy with implication. Finally, the taller one stood, signaling the end of their visit. We'll be monitoring your activities closely, he warned. Don't make us regret letting you continue. Once they were gone, Alina sank onto her couch, exhaustion washing over her. She had managed to buy some time, But she knew it wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come out. And when it did, she prayed humanity would rise to the occasion. Back aboard Orion's Echo, Zenera received troubling news. Human satellites had detected traces of their transmissions, prompting increased surveillance of Earth's orbit. Military drones now patrolled the skies, scanning for anomalies. Worse still, several high-ranking members of the Valeth Council had called for immediate withdrawal, citing the growing threat of exposure. "We can't stay here indefinitely," Valor told Zenera during a private meeting. His glowing patterns shifted uneasily, betraying his conflicted emotions. "If we're discovered prematurely, it could lead to panic, or worse, hostility. Our mission was never meant to escalate this far." "But it has," Zenera insisted, her voice trembling with urgency. "We've made progress, Captain. Humanity isn't ready to meet us openly yet, but they're learning. If we leave now, we abandon everything we've worked for." Valor sighed deeply, his gaze fixed on the hologram of Earth spinning silently below. "Then what do you propose? How do we balance diplomacy with safety?" Zenera hesitated, her mind racing. Then an idea sparked. A risky plan, but one that might preserve the fragile bond she had forged. "Let me go back down there," she said finally. "Just once more. I'll ensure Elena understands the risks and help her prepare for whatever comes next. Together, we can find a way forward." Valor studied her intently, his expression unreadable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded. "Very well. But you must act swiftly. Time is no longer on our side." As Zenera prepared to return to Earth, her heart swelled with determination. She knew the path ahead would be fraught with danger, but she also believed in the potential for unity. Somewhere amidst the chaos, hope still flickered, a beacon guiding both species toward a brighter future. The decision to return to Earth weighed heavily on Zenera as she prepared for her final mission. Though Captain Valor had granted her permission, the risks were undeniable. Military drones now patrolled the skies with increasing frequency, their sensors scanning for any sign of extraterrestrial activity. If discovered, Zenera's presence could spark panic, or worse, hostility. Yet, despite the danger, she couldn't abandon Elena or the fragile connection they had built. Humanity deserved a chance to prove itself, and Zenera was determined to give them that opportunity. As Orion's Echo descended into Earth's atmosphere under the cover of night, Zenera activated her cloaking device once more. Her translucent form shimmered faintly before disappearing entirely, blending seamlessly into the shadows. The forest clearing where she and Elena had first met awaited her below, its familiar scent of damp earth and pine filling her sensory receptors. This time, however, the air carried an undertone of tension, a reminder of the stakes at hand. Zenera materialized silently in the same spot, her glowing patterns dimmed to avoid detection. She scanned the area carefully, her multifaceted eyes adjusting to the darkness. The campsite was empty, but traces of human activity remained. A tent partially collapsed, scattered notebooks, and the makeshift communication device Elena had been working on. Zenera's heart sank momentarily. Had something happened to her? Before she could dwell on the thought, a soft rustling drew her attention. Emerging from behind a cluster of trees was Elena herself, flashlight in hand. Her face was pale and drawn, dark circles underlining her eyes, but her expression lit up with relief when she spotted Zenera's faint outline. "You came back," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. She rushed forward, stopping just short of reaching out to touch the alien. "I wasn't sure you would. I promised we'd meet again," Zenera replied telepathically, her tone warm yet tinged with urgency. "But time is running out, Elena. My people are preparing to leave orbit. We cannot stay much longer." Elena nodded grimly, clutching the flashlight tightly. "I know. Things have gotten complicated here too. Government agents showed up at my lab. They're watching me, Zenera. If they find out about you—" "They won't," Zenera interrupted firmly. "Not if we act quickly. I need your help, Alina. Together, we can send one last message, a plea for understanding. It may be our only chance to prevent conflict." Alina hesitated, her gaze dropping to the ground. For a moment, doubt flickered across her features. Could humanity truly rise to the occasion? Or would fear and mistrust overshadow everything they had worked for? Then, steeling herself, she looked back at Sinara with renewed determination. "Tell me what to do," she said simply. Over the next several hours, Sinara and Alina worked tirelessly to refine the communication device. Using fragments of alien tech left behind during previous visits, they enhanced its capabilities, allowing it to transmit a more complex signal. Sinara shared holographic projections of Caliph Prime, showcasing not only its beauty, but also the values of cooperation and sustainability central to Valith society. Alina, in turn, compiled videos highlighting humanity's resilience, creativity, and capacity for compassion. "We need to show both sides at their best," Alina explained, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she edited footage. "If your people see the good in us, and if humans see the good in yours, it might bridge the gap." Sinara agreed, her glowing patterns shifting in approval. "Yes, and we must emphasize that peace benefits everyone. Fear only leads to destruction." As dawn approached, their work neared completion. The device hummed softly, ready to broadcast a message of unity across the stars. But just as they prepared to activate it, a loud whirring sound shattered the silence. Drones appeared overhead, their cameras swiveling toward the clearing. "They found us," Alina exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. "Stay calm," Sinara urged, her bioluminescent skin pulsing rapidly. "Activate the device. Trust me." With shaking hands, Alina pressed the button. A burst of light shot skyward, accompanied by a rhythmic pulse that echoed through the forest. The drones paused mid-air, their systems temporarily overwhelmed by the unfamiliar signal. Seizing the moment, Sinara grabbed Alina's arm and pulled her deeper into the trees, activating her cloaking device as they fled. They didn't stop until they reached a secluded cave hidden beneath dense foliage. Inside, Sinara deactivated her camouflage, her form shimmering back into view. Alina collapsed onto the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now we wait," Sinara replied gently. "The message has been sent. All we can do is hope it reaches those who will listen." Back aboard Orion's Echo, the crew detected the transmission almost immediately. The holographic display in the central chamber flickered to life, projecting images of Earth's diversity alongside depictions of Caliph Prime. Words scrolled across the screen in multiple languages, emphasizing themes of peace, curiosity, and mutual respect. Captain Vaylor watched the playback intently, his glowing patterns shifting between shades of contemplation and awe. "This is remarkable," he murmured. Turning to Sinara, who had just returned to the ship via emergency recall, he added, "You've done well. Perhaps there is hope after all." Rennis, however, remained skeptical. "It's a gamble," he cautioned. "What if they misinterpret the message? Or worse, ignore it?" "We have no choice but to trust them," Sinara countered, her tone unwavering. "Fear will only breed more fear. If we want a future worth striving for, we must take this leap of faith." Taver nodded in agreement. "She's right. Humanity's flaws are undeniable, but so is their potential. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt." After a tense discussion, the Council reached a consensus. They would delay their departure long enough to observe Earth's response. In the meantime, they would continue monitoring global communications, searching for signs of acceptance or rejection. On Earth, the impact of the message rippled outward like waves on a pond. Governments scrambled to analyze the data, while scientists debated its implications. Social media erupted with speculation, ranging from excitement to skepticism. But amid the chaos, a movement began to take shape, a coalition of individuals and organizations advocating for peaceful contact. Alina became a reluctant figurehead for this cause, using her platform to share insights gained from Zenera. Though still under surveillance, she refused to back down, driven by the belief that humanity could rise above its fears. And somewhere among the stars, Zenera watched Earth with bated breath, her glowing patterns steady with quiet hope. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, she allowed herself to dream of a future where two vastly different species could stand together, not as adversaries, but as allies. The days following the transmission were tense for both Earth and Orion's Echo. Humanity wrestled with the implications of the message, while the Valith waited anxiously to see how their gesture of peace would be received. For Alina, the pressure mounted as she became a central figure in the growing movement advocating for open communication with extraterrestrial life. Her makeshift device had sparked a global conversation, one that divided opinion but ultimately inspired hope. In cities around the world, protests erupted, some demanding caution, others calling for immediate contact. Scientists debated whether the signal was genuine or an elaborate hoax, while governments scrambled to formulate policies. Amid the chaos, Alina worked tirelessly to amplify Zenera's message of unity. She gave interviews, wrote articles, and collaborated with like-minded individuals to build a coalition dedicated to fostering trust between humanity and the unknown. "We don't have to fear what we don't understand," she declared during a televised address. "This is an opportunity, a chance to prove that we're capable of more than division and conflict. Let's show the stars who we truly are." Her words resonated deeply, igniting a wave of optimism among those willing to embrace the unknown. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Leaders from various nations convened at the United Nations headquarters to discuss a unified response. It wasn't unanimous. Skepticism lingered, but enough voices called for diplomacy that a resolution was reached. Humanity would send a reply, inviting the mysterious beings to make formal contact. Back aboard Orion's Echo, the crew monitored Earth's response with bated breath. When the human message finally reached them, it was simple yet profound. "We hear you. We want to understand. Come meet us." For a moment, silence reigned in the ship's central chamber. Then, Captain Vaylor broke into a rare smile, his glowing patterns shifting to a warm golden hue. "It seems they've chosen peace over fear," he said softly. "Let this be remembered as the day two worlds took their first step toward unity." Zenera felt a surge of pride and relief. All her efforts, all her risks, had led to this moment. Turning to her team, she asked, "Are we ready?" Renus nodded, though his expression remained cautious. "If we do this, we must do it openly. No more hiding. Transparency will be key." Tavor chimed in, his multifaceted eyes gleaming with excitement. "And what better place than the United Nations? If humanity can unite under one roof, so can we." With unanimous agreement, the decision was made. Orion's Echo descended toward Earth once more, this time without cloaking technology. As the sleek spacecraft appeared in the skies above New York City, its shimmering hull reflected sunlight like a second sun. Panic rippled through the streets below, but it quickly gave way to awe as news outlets broadcast live footage of the alien vessel descending gracefully toward the UN headquarters. Alina stood among the crowd gathered outside the building, her heart pounding with anticipation. She had been invited to witness the historic event firsthand, a testament to her role in bridging the gap between species. As the spacecraft touched down gently on the designated landing pad, a collective gasp swept through the spectators. The ship's surface shimmered faintly, pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that seemed almost alive. A hatch opened slowly, revealing three figures stepping out onto the platform. Zenera led the way, her translucent form glowing brightly as cameras captured every detail. Behind her were Renus and Tavor, their presence equally mesmerizing. For a moment, the entire world held its breath. Then Zenera spoke, not telepathically, but aloud, her voice translated seamlessly into multiple languages thanks to advanced Valith technology. "We come in peace," she began, her tone calm yet filled with emotion. "We are explorers, seekers of knowledge and understanding. Your message reached us, and we answer with hope." The crowd erupted into cheers, tears streaming down countless faces. Inside the UN Assembly Hall, delegates rose to their feet, applauding as the Violet delegation entered. Elena followed close behind, her presence symbolizing the bond that had brought them together. As Zenera addressed the assembly, she shared holographic projections of Caliph Prime, explaining their culture, values, and aspirations. In turn, representatives from Earth showcased humanity's achievements, struggles, and dreams. The exchange was raw and imperfect, but it carried an undeniable authenticity, one born of vulnerability and courage. When the session concluded, Elena approached Zenera, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You did it," she said softly. "You showed us that connection is possible, even across unimaginable differences." Zenera smiled, her glowing patterns shifting to a soft blue. "No, Elena, we did it, together. This is just the beginning." In the weeks that followed, a new chapter unfolded. Teams of scientists and diplomats from both species collaborated to establish protocols for future interactions. Plans were drawn up for shared research initiatives, cultural exchanges, and joint efforts to tackle challenges facing both planets. Humanity.